Right now we're in a cycle where we're rewarded for speaking in the extremes and getting either clicks or views.
Subscribe, by the way.
Stress occurs in a lot of different ways, so you always have to address that.
Does everyone at Tanium have this?
Everyone at Tanium who's earned one has one. Putting yourself into a position or a place where you are at risk. Now in a challenge, if I present mine to you and you don't have yours, you're buying drinks. And we should seek opportunities, because this is the way we've essentially evolved as humans, to find those stressful environments and test yourself.
All right, we are here in the Bay Area. We're at the offices of Tanium. They are a cybersecurity company. They work with top US banks, all branches of the US military. They work with DODs, MODs, really interesting company. And we're gonna be talking to their CEO, Dan Streetman. He was a former Ranger in the US Army. The guy is like Captain America, I tell you. They have 2,000 employees, and we're gonna be talking to Dan about all things cybersecurity and tech. I'm William Salvi. This is the CEO series where we have real conversations with real CEOs. Let's go talk to Dan. We're with the Tanium CEO, Dan Streetman. Dan, thank you for joining us.
Thanks very much, Will. Good to be here.
Good to have you. I want to start off, we were just talking about it off camera. I want to know how being a US Army Ranger has prepared you to be a CEO.
All right, it's a lot
Loaded question.
There's a lot to that statement. So I am a US Army Ranger, but many of us in the military would say I'm Ranger qualified, which means I went to Ranger School, which is a very grueling training to be prepared to be a leader in a light infantry unit. I didn't have the opportunity to serve in a Ranger unit.
Okay.
So the whole idea is to train you as a leader in a light infantry unit to help an organization accomplish difficult tasks in a challenging environment. So you're not eating, you're not sleeping, you have Ranger instructors kind of in your face the whole time. And the way it happens is you rotate into a leadership position roughly every 12 hours. And so one moment you're not leading, and the next moment you're in charge of this group who is sleep deprived, given a challenging task, and you're taking them through that rough environment while learning light infantry skills. It's an incredible challenge. It still remains probably the hardest thing I've done. I've now 13 full Ironmans. I do that day in and day out versus a day at Ranger School.
It is insane to me that you've done that, by the way. Like I've been looking at it, the fact that you have to do like 100+ miles of bike and then a 2.5 mile swim. I've told you I ran the marathon, humble brag, but not a humble brag in front of you.
No, it's absolutely, like anytime you take on something you haven't done before, you should share it. It's fun and it's a neat challenge. Look, I've done marathons as well. Trust me, my marathon in an Ironman is a lot slower than my marathon otherwise, because you have, you swam 2.4 miles and biked 112.
Yeah.
And then you go run a marathon.
All right. A lot of people live in a very safe environment. You deal with a lot of cyber threats. Mm-hmm. You were in combat too. Can you tell us how you respond and deal with threats and how real they are?
Well, so there's a great book called Comfort Crisis, right? All about getting out and putting yourself into a position or a place where you are at risk. And the idea here is that we are very comfortable now, and we should seek opportunities, because this is the way we've essentially evolved as humans, to find those stressful environments and test yourselves.
There's a lot of distrust with tech.
Right.
How does Tanium combat that with the mission?
Yeah, well, I mean, that comes back to what we provide. It's the power of certainty. So organizations sometimes don't even know all the things that are connected in their environment. They certainly don't know what software is running, where their vulnerabilities are. So our promise to our customers is exactly that, the power of certainty.
You know, the US Army and being an Army Ranger and all that you went through in that training versus like running a business, it's very different. You can't obviously put your coworkers through that type of stress and how you lead them. So how do you manage that and what you learned in the Army and now bring it to a business environment?
Well, look, stress occurs in a lot of different ways. So you always have to address that. That's the way Ranger School introduces stress. But we introduce stress for ourselves by creating high expectations for ourselves. We have a very stressful job. We support the most security conscious and innovative companies in the world with our software. But if everybody understands the mission and what they're trying to accomplish, everything goes much more smoothly and you feel equipped to deal with it. Just something that pushes you, I think, makes you a more well-rounded person and helps you prepare for those stressful environments and other environments. And to your point, we come back every day thinking about what could go wrong in organizations we support. We deliver endpoint management software. So what we help organizations do is identify everything in their environment that's running from a software perspective, all of the things in their environment that have a computer in it, and those are all vulnerable. And we love the fact that at Tanium we help protect them. It's stressful, but if we stay focused on the purpose, which is providing the power of certainty to the organizations we support, that helps everybody stay focused on what they've got to do.
Who are the bad actors?
A bad actor can be a small bad actor, to your point, in a basement, or it's state actors. And there are lots of different ways that they will penetrate environments.
What do they do? What are they trying to penetrate and get?
So you exploit future opportunities. You gather information, you gather insights.
How often is it like in the movies where a hacker gets in and you guys are like, I want him to work for us now because he hacked in? Is that
Well,
ever
there
happened?
are a lot of ethical hackers who work with organizations to help
Like try to hack it. Yeah.
identify weaknesses, what exploits there are, and that's one of the things we do at Tanium. We provide guidance to organizations, literally called Tanium Guide. You know, we're used to get the letter from your great uncle that you didn't know from someplace, another country, and they were going to deposit money in your bank account. And we all laughed at those. Phishing attempts now are more and more sophisticated. Unfortunately, bad actors are able to use AI in the same way we're looking to use AI to protect ourselves against them. So those threats become more and more effective.
What worries you most about AI? I always hear about all the benefits and I
Mm-hmm.
see all the great things, but I don't know if people talk enough about the threats of AI and the potential dangers of AI. So what do you see on your end?
Well, certainly the thing that keeps us awake at night is that bad actors, whether they are looking to gain wealth or gain insights, are going to be able to use AI to more effectively approach their targets than they were before. They can learn very quickly, and since they don't have any moral hazard, they will move very fast. So I worry a lot about AI in the wrong players' hands. Now, the good news is we're using AI to drive our autonomous endpoint management to help organizations make decisions faster. At West Point, you learn about this thing called the OODA loop. Observe, I orient, I decide, and I act. So if I'm a fighter pilot, I observe, I understand what's going on, then I decide, and then I act, and I might have done a maneuver, and I have to start that cycle all over again. So the whole idea is how do I make my OODA loop go faster than my opponent? And that's what we do at Tanium. We help them decide about tough changes they have to make, understand what's happening in their environment, and that's where I believe the investments that we make at Tanium and the investments that I think, again, the free world, some of the most innovative economies will continue to stay ahead of bad actors. But you have to be careful.
Served in the military, CEO, 13 Ironmans, which is outrageous to me. And then on top of that, you guide people, visually impaired runners in marathons, also Ironmans too, right?
One friend who lost his guide about 4 weeks before an Ironman, I was training for that one, and they called me up and said, would you do it? He's a better swimmer than me. His bike was too large for me, but we finished the Ironman and he got across the finish line.
One part of your story is how you were in the Rangers, in the military. Then you went to McKinsey and Harvard Business School, or and then you went back to the military. So how did you go from military career to business school, back to military, and now tech executive? And did you always think you wanted to be a CEO?
One of the things after I returned back from going back on active duty is to work with a lot of military team members who are transitioning into technology. And the first thing I tell them is all the best career planning is going to occur in the rearview mirror. No, I didn't think that I was going to follow this path. I knew I wanted to work in probably the most relevant spaces. And when I went to West Point, we were still in the middle of a Cold War. It was 1986. Soviet Union fell as we graduated. China looked like we were moving in an era we were going to collaborate. The world looked pretty peaceful. And I wasn't sure what the military was going to do. I loved serving, but I wasn't sure how relevant the military was going to be. Turns out I was wrong. The year I graduated from Harvard Business School after leaving the military, 9/11 happened. So I stayed in the reserves. So when the Army needed me and called me, I went back on active duty.
Did they literally call you?
Well, they literally drop an envelope on your doorstep. My wife came back from a bike ride on her 40th birthday and there was an envelope there. I was fortunate to serve in a pretty unique position. I was the strategist for the commanding general of all operational forces in Iraq. It was an important assignment and one I felt that I should do, but it's very disruptive. I was in the middle of my career. My children were, preteen and teenagers. It was a difficult time. We didn't live in a military community. It was hard. I was a soccer coach for, our soccer team. So for my son to deal with me all of a sudden being gone after being pretty present in his life a lot is difficult. Look, there were lots of people who did, get hurt or who unfortunately died. And so you can't take it flippantly and understand that I was lucky to essentially be able to do the job I did and be safe.
What was Iraq like?
It's 24/7. You're on all the time. We took Sunday mornings off, but you're out. Now, I want to be careful and differentiate it. I don't think anybody in the modern military has really been in an all-out war the same as, say, World War II or some of the conflicts that are raging now. Even when we were in Iraq or in Afghanistan, you came back to the forward operating base and you got to eat a warm meal and sleep in a cot. It's a very stressful environment, but it's also different. But it's very difficult to come back from, to be honest. 10 great years in software, now I deploy again and I'm reconnected with what that service was like. It was hard to care about things in the same way when I came back. That's how I started doing Ironmans. I needed something to focus on because it was difficult. I used to love mowing my lawn. I took great care of it. You didn't care about that the same way when you still have, colleagues that are in harm's way deployed, protecting freedoms.
Do you help other veterans do that? I know you're involved in some organizations. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So sure, that was, I think, probably the epiphany for me was my first 8 years of active duty were challenging. Right? We trained hard. I went to Ranger School, all those aspects of it, but I was never in harm's way, really. I mean, the danger jumping out of planes is different from when people are shooting you or, trying to blow up your vehicle. When I went back to Iraq 10 years later and I was with essentially those same peer group, they'd been deployed 3 or 4 times. And not everybody can sustain that. So I did take it as a personal mission to help people transition. I founded an organization at Salesforce with the support of Mark Benioff called VetForce to help veterans transition. And now I work with organizations like Breakline and Vets in Tech to help people transition. And that's where that whole I&T came from, is they want to work in information technology. They know it's exciting. And the I and the T that I tell them are important are integrity and teamwork. If you bring that, we'll teach you the skills. We'll teach you how to use the language of technology and operate within our environment. But the thing I care about is that you've operated with integrity, you've done what you say you would do, and you understand that you'll never do as much alone as you will with a team.
It's interesting because Dan served in combat and, U.S. Army Ranger. So there's nothing really that can replicate the fear and the intensity of being in combat. Kind of diminishes what you deal with in civilian life, as you would call it, as a CEO. But I know that CEOs have real fears about leading their people and where the company goes and if they're doing the best job they can do. But it seems like Dan's a very capable person and he seems very confident in what he's doing. I was mostly interested in his experiences with intense situations and how it's prepped him to kind of deal with just about anything. The fact that he's ran 13 Ironmans is ridiculous to me. In fact, I think it's a little crazy. He seems like he's an active guy. He needs to keep the engine on, You're trying to change the game in cybersecurity, yes. So you're trying to be a leader within that industry.
Right.
And cyber is becoming kind of this broad term with AI, and quantum is now a thing. So how are you taking these leadership lessons and everything that you are into making a company that is hopefully going to be leading the cyber security world?
So this is a really great point, and this almost comes back to this idea that factions and silos are disruptive. In many of the largest organizations, there's an IT operations team and there's a security team. And in some places, they don't work together very well. What we do at Tanium is give them a single pane of glass so they have the same insights. And now you bring us to the level where we are delivering autonomous endpoint management. We're helping them make decisions about operations and security in that faster loop than ever before. What we deliver is autonomous endpoint management, and we give organizations a confidence score so they can decide what changes they're going to make, execute those changes quickly, and again, speed up their response to threats or risk and compliance. We are the only organization, because of the way our technology is architected, that can deliver that real-time visibility, that real-time control, and that real-time ability to take action, and give organizations a confidence score that helps them decide what to do next.
Why is this important to you?
Look, I love every aspect of serving communities. Getting the chance to go to the military academy and understand that motto of duty, honor, country is something that still resonates with me. I've loved doing it in software. Every software role I've had, I felt like I was helping organizations either serve their customers or their communities better. Tanium for me is now the peak of that pyramid. It's an incredibly important mission with very important security conscious and innovative customers, and that's exciting to me. And I love the fact that I get to continue to serve.
So the way you talk about like duty and serving the company and responding to threats, it makes me hopeful about like how you are leading your company and ultimately like hopefully the broader community.
Well, look, and by nature, is that my team will tell you, I am an optimistic person.
Yeah.
You know, we can spend a lot of time talking about all the things that are wrong and bad in the world right now. Yet, fewer people die of violence than ever before. Fewer people die of hunger, starvation than ever before. Most people everywhere live longer than ever before. So it's a pretty amazing time to be alive.
What do you think is the most important trait for a leader to have while running a company?
Sure. And I think I could talk about the magic of and. The most important traits, I think, are confidence and humility. The confidence that you've built the skills and built the approach to what you're going to do, but the humility to know you're never going to have every answer.
What would you tell world leaders right now if you could speak to them?
I may be old-fashioned. This may not work anymore. I don't think so. I think President Eisenhower, President Lincoln, great leaders through history brought people together versus separating them. And that's what I would point them back to those examples. I'm sure it feels like right now I have to get a headline, I have to get a click, and so therefore I'm going to speak in extreme or speak in pejoratives about others. I think we'll evolve through that. And I think we'll get back to this point where great leaders bring organizations together and don't drive them apart or create factions.
Mm-hmm. What does leadership mean to you in a very broad sense? Because you've been around a lot of good leaders. You're leading a company yourself now. You're a father. So tell me what leadership means to you. I know you mentioned honesty and integrity. I think those words don't get thrown out enough amongst the leaders that society sees. So I'm just interested.
Leadership is helping people accomplish something that they might not have accomplished before, but then when they finish, they say, we did it. When you show up to West Point, they're encouraging you to be brave and step out and lead. So there's signs everywhere as you're going through what we call beast barracks, say lead from the front. And my takeaway from it was it's only half right. As a leader, you need to set the example from the front. You have to work harder, you eat last, you make sure others are taken care of first. That's leading from the front, but it's setting the example from the front. The best leaders lead from the middle. They recognize they're never going to have all of the solution, all of the data they need to have to lead, particularly in a modern organization. So if you lead from the middle, you're getting those insights from your organization, from your team.
I loved that Dan said he was all about integrity and honesty and like teamwork. I don't think leaders say that enough. It honestly seems like he's a great guy to work for. It seems like he's a great person to lead a company into greener pastures. To be honest with you, like Dan's the type of person that I would want to follow. He seems like he's got a lot of integrity and he does things the right way. He seems like the type of guy that if I was in a corner goofing off with other team members and he looked at me and he was disappointed, I'd be disappointed that I disappointed Dan. And that's a good leader. And I honestly think the business community at large companies need more of that. I don't think there's enough people that talk about integrity and honesty outwardly in media. So I was glad to hear that he wants to lead from the middle. He wants to do things the right way. You know, he's in it with his team members, and he comes from a military background, but he seems to have well adjusted himself to the business world, because you can't be this hard-nosed military guy in this tech space in the Bay Area. That wouldn't work either. So he obviously has adjusted himself well, while also keeping the core values that he holds near and dear to his heart with the military. I hope I'm not getting too personal here, but when were you like most afraid in the service?
Certainly in times when there's bullets flying in both directions or something goes boom. You're afraid. Now many of us have different responses. I have the everything slows down response. So when something begins
You don't give off a I get afraid vibe.
to...
That's why I'm asking.
I mean, it's really hard for me to say when I really felt afraid. Here's a good example of how I'm wired, and I'm unique. I'm not worried about dying. I don't want to die, don't get me wrong, and I worry about what we leave behind. I'm worried about doing something stupid, dying, and then people say, man, that was really dumb. Because I should have thought about it. But the risk of death isn't the same for me, and I think that is a freeing thing to a degree. I love doing things that build my adrenaline. I love skiing in relatively extreme environments. That helps me have fun. But you got to be careful with that.
Our fire round now.
Okay.
Who is a leader that you do not know that you'd like to sit down and have dinner with?
I'm going to assume I can go back in time. It'd be Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah. Now let's choose someone alive too.
I'd put Bill Gates pretty high on that list.
What's a show that you've binged recently that you want to tell me about?
I'm looking forward to the next season of Severance.
Okay.
I think Severance is a very interesting concept.
I watched that show.
And I thought that was pretty neat, and it starts this month. I'm excited for that.
What's a book that leaders should read if you're looking to be a leader?
I'm a big fan, as our team knows, of Measure What Matters, John Doerr. One of my most recent books that I enjoyed about leadership is And There Was Light by John Meacham about Abraham Lincoln.
Tell me about your best friend.
My best friend is my wife. We met when we were sophomores in high school. We went to different high schools, but we went to literally the Hugh O'Brien Youth Leadership Foundation together, met each other there, and the rest is history. Many, many years later, we're still married. We have a wonderful life, and she's my best friend.
Nice. Last meal on earth?
Pizza. Pretty straightforward.
Just like a big ass pizza.
Everything you need. Everything you need is on a pizza. You get vegetables, you get meat, you get bread. It's the ultimate convenient meal.
What's your advice to young people who are worried about tech?
This is a very real concern, and it has been for millennia. So, right, we are familiar with people that are anti-tech or Luddites. Remember the Luddites? They destroyed looms because they thought the looms would take the jobs away from weavers. 100 years ago, most of the United States worked on a farm. And those jobs are gone, but people found new jobs. I do believe that as humans, we adapt and overcome. And so I don't worry about losing jobs. I don't worry about it changing our quality of life. You know, I think we'll still drive cars. We still ride horses, but we just do it for fun. But I do believe that we'll continue to advance. And then generally, I'm an optimist about it. Doesn't mean there aren't bad actors and bad people, and that's what Tanium helps protect against.
One thing that excited me just generally about the interview was that it's in a very hot topic space, which is technology centered around AI and cyber threats and cybersecurity. And it seems like they have cutting edge technology to deal with those threats and combat things that are very real in our world. We hear all the time about the great things of AI. We hear all the great things about quantum computing. But what do we know about the true threats that exist to schools, to financial institutions, to military branches? Like, these are real issues that a company like Tanium has to combat. So it's really neat that he comes from a military background and now he's leading this tech company. I think it's awesome. We think about all the fun topics in business and tech, which is, you know, generative AI and all, but now these are serious things that Tanium is dealing with. And I thought the interview was great. I love learning about his military experience, what his values were. And like I said, he's the type of leader that I would want to work for and follow. What impact do you want on the world?
First and foremost, it's to be a good father and a good husband. And so far, knock on the biggest block of wood I can find, I think I'm doing okay. And after that, I don't think about it. I don't. People ask what you want on your epitaph or where do you want to be buried or what. Today's enough. Like, make the most of every day.